A new baby in the house. Yes, yes. So, for those of you who are already parents, you'll understand how busy I am lately and how sleep deprived I am. But I really wanted to make this video so that you guys know that mommy's okay, baby's okay, the whole family is okay. So let me take you back a couple of weeks ago. We were about 38 weeks pregnant, and my doctor had already warned me that the baby was looking to be larger than average. She was thinking around 9 pounds. So she was encouraging me, okay, you should start considering maybe scheduling an induction so that you can have the baby a little bit earlier at 39 weeks, so that the delivery wouldn't be as hard on my body as waiting it out and seeing what happens and allowing the baby to get bigger and bigger and bigger, which would just make delivery really difficult. So I was kind of at a loss because I really didn't want to go through that pitocin, which is the hormone that makes you start contractions to have the baby early, because I read that it increases the chances of a cesarean section, and that was really not what I wanted at all. I did not want a C-section. I thought that vaginal births are the best. It's best for the baby. It's better for me, recovery-wise, because you start recovering as soon as you finish delivering, whereas a C-section, your recovery time is a lot longer, like 6 weeks total for a C-section. So I was at a loss because I wanted to keep it as natural, my delivery as natural as possible, without any intervention my husband and I, we went home and we decided to try every single natural remedy out there. I ate 2 whole pineapples. It did nothing. So for those of you who were warning me during the fruit platter to not eat pineapple because you read that it causes contraction, it did nothing for me, like nothing at all. I ate 2 full pineapples. It made no difference at all. And I tried raspberry leaf tea. I tried walking. I was walking maybe like 3 miles every day, hoping that the baby will be encouraged to arrive after a long walk. I tried spicy food. I was eating Indian food. I was eating Szechuan. And if you've had Szechuan, there are a lot of like tingly, numbing spices in Szechuan food. And those 2 things did nothing for me. We really tried a lot. We were desperate for a natural beginning to the delivery, and to make sure that the baby was okay, size-wise. And yes, on like delivering earlier, would mean that the baby would be smaller than if we waited 2 or 3 more weeks. So, all of that said, I went to my 40th week appointment, and my lab technician said, okay, here are your photos, and I hope not to see you next week, because at that point I would be past due. And I was thinking, oh man, if I make it, like I was hoping that any day now the baby would come and things would be okay and everything would be settled without me having to make a decision. I was kind of just hoping for the best. So at that point the doctor's like, okay, you're basically due now, and if we're gonna have the baby arrive like vaginally and at a size that I can handle, like you need to schedule an induction, because things could happen. Like there's a higher possibility of like hemorrhaging. There's a possibility the baby could get stuck in the vaginal canal if he's too big. There could be a possibility of trying to deliver him vaginally, but then he gets stuck and then I'll need a cesarean section anyways. So there was a lot of risks on the table. So I decided, okay, I'm going to schedule the induction, and the soonest appointment was the following week on a Monday. So I was like, okay, that gives us 5 days, and we'll just see. If the baby really doesn't make it the following week, week 41, then we would have to go about an induction, because at that point the baby would be very, very big and very difficult for me to deliver. So a neighbor friend of ours was kind of joking. She's like, oh, you're past due, right? Well, what worked for 2 other pregnant friends was to take this 5-mile hike close to where we live. And she's like, both women took this hike, and 100% of them went into labor the next day. And I was like, at this point I'm willing to try anything. So my husband and I strapped on our sneakers, got our doggy to go on a walk with us on Saturday, and we did that hike. We're just like, okay, last ditch effort to get the baby to come out. I don't know. We were just like desperate, because I was so uncomfortable. I was already really huge. I couldn't find a comfortable sleeping position. I just felt my belly was, taking over. So we went on that hike. We came back home on Saturday. We're just resting, and then the following day, Sunday, at 5:30 a.m., I woke up with these strange cramps, like when you have a really bad period. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like I haven't had period feelings in over 9 months, because obviously during pregnancy you don't have a period. So I was like, oh, that's weird, and it's sort of pretty painful. So I woke up my husband like, hey, something strange is going on. And then I realized that it was my contractions starting, and they were about 20 minutes apart. So that was essentially the entire morning. I was having like contractions, but they were like not too bad. I mean, they only lasted like 10 seconds, but they were about 20 minutes apart. So we didn't know how quickly the contractions would accelerate, because for those of you who haven't had delivery yet, the closer the contractions are and the longer the contractions are, that means the baby's getting, you're getting closer and closer to delivering the baby. So we set up dog sitting for our dog, like, because we didn't know exactly when the baby was coming. So we just decided, okay, let's drop the dog off just in case something happens today. And the entire day went by, and I was still contracting, and it was still kind of just like the stable every 20 minutes for like 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So we decided to go on a walk to kind of just like move, because moving is the best way to kind of like ignore the pain or just work the pain out instead of just sitting there and just like feeling the pain constantly. So we went on a walk, we came back home, and then the contractions kind of disappeared. And I was thinking, okay, maybe this was false contractions, like false labor. Well, I'm glad I didn't go to the hospital, but I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, maybe this is it. And then when the contractions disappeared, I was kind of like, oh man, that means the baby isn't coming anytime soon. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll just wait it out. It might be another week, you know, because at that point I was already 4 days late. And I was like, oh man, how much longer do I have to wait? Because I really want to meet my little son. So I kind of was able to take a nap, and then that night, on Sunday night, going into Monday morning, oh man, I started getting contractions again, and they were so painful, and they were lasting about 40 seconds, but they were still really spread apart. They were about 15 minutes apart, and according to the childbirth class that I took at the hospital, they said that pregnant women will be turned away from the hospital if the contractions aren't 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 minute for 1 hour. It's called 511, because at that point, the hospital knows that you're in labor and that you're gonna have the baby, because the contractions are so like close together and very strong. So I was like, okay, maybe it's happening, maybe it's happening. So around 2:30 a.m. on Monday morning, the contractions disappeared again. Like, I wasn't having them. I was like, oh man, I thought this was the real thing. So I decided, okay, I'm just gonna take a shower. I'm gonna have some hot water, just like fall on my back, because my back was really hurting, because all the contractions, people talk about their uterus contracting, but it's really the pain is in your back and in your hips. And it's basically from the baby's head putting pressure on your hips, like the opening, right? So the opening to your vaginal canal, like your hips feel it a lot, because they're just like, they're stretching open to make, you know, just open a couple, like your hip bones are opening up like just a couple centimeters to make extra room for the baby to, you know, come out. So it's really painful. So I took a shower, and I was just like, okay, if it doesn't happen today, it doesn't happen, but you know, I'm just gonna relax a little bit, because it was a really long day and I hadn't slept since the previous day. And when I got out of the shower, all of a sudden the contractions were so strong, and I was like, oh man, like this is really, really hard. Like, I can't even think straight. It's so painful. And then they were about 4 minutes apart. My husband was like, whoa, they're coming really fast. I'm like, I know, I don't have time to catch a breath. And I was like, I think we should go to the hospital. We hopped into the car. Unfortunately, the hospital was, you know, just down the street. It's not far at all. It's only like 5 minutes away. But in those 5 minutes, I had like 3 more contractions. Like, the contractions were coming like 2 minutes apart, 1 minute apart. So I was like, oh my God, get me to the hospital. This is so hard. So it was the middle of the night. We got there at 4 a.m. We had to go through the ER entrance, because the rest of the entrances to the hospital were closed, because it's the middle of the night. They immediately put me in a wheelchair and like sent me straight to the delivery room, which, thank God, I really needed them to admit me. So it took about an hour for them to take my blood pressure pressure, check my contractions, get an IV in my arm, and to do like the regular routine things to get me into the hospital. And then about, I believe 6:30, the hospital's anesthesiologist came in with the good drugs. It's the epidural that basically numbs you from the waist down. Oh goodness, I really needed that because the contractions were so strong and so painful. Like, I could not deal. I applaud women who can handle their deliveries naturally without any pain medication, but I'm not one of those people. Like, I know myself and I know I'm not a hero. So, absolutely, I took the epidural, and, you know, within 10 minutes, the contractions just kind of disappeared. It's no longer an issue. And I was able to sleep 2 more hours. About 2 more hours, I think. I think I slept from like 6:30 until 9:30 or so. And goodness, I really needed those 2 hours to really save up my energy because I had a lot of work to do when I woke up. So about 9 o'clock, I woke up, and it was time. My doctor showed up. She checked me. She says, "Okay, I'm 10 centimeters dilated. The baby has like dropped enough that it is safe and a good time to deliver. Basically, the baby's ready. I was ready." And man, oh man, like even with the epidural, you could feel the pressure. Like there was so much pressure on my back, on my hips. It was just excruciating with the epidural, which is crazy. And then the epidural was kind of fading, and that's like a hospital technique because they want you to feel the pain in order to push against the pain. It's like a counter action. So I pushed for dear life for over an hour and 40 minutes. And did I mention I had a big baby? I had an enormous baby. Oh my gosh. My enormous baby and I worked and worked at moving the baby down. The uterus was contracting down, bringing the baby down, and I was pushing and pushing, and goodness, I did not think I was going to do it. Honestly, at some points I was like, I can't do this, it's too hard. This is nearly impossible. Doctors, the nurses were amazing though. I was like, you can do it, you're doing amazing. That last push, that was amazing, do that one again. Like push through it, you can do it. And I was like, I can't. Oh my god. I didn't think that there was going to be an end to all the pushing. I really thought that the baby was going to live just like hanging out there forever because there was no way that he was going to come out. And like miraculously, the baby came out, and my husband was there. He was present, so he got to peek around on the other side. He's like, oh, I can see the head. Oh, he has a lot of hair. So he was really excited, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. But finally, after over an hour and a half of pushing, the doctor's like, one last push, and I was like, with like zero energy left in me, I was like, and baby came out, and my husband cut the cord, and then nurses were cleaning him up, wiping him down, and then I heard the cry, and he was like, So that was amazing. And they're like, okay, the nurses asked me if I wanted to have the baby on my chest. I'm like, yes, I want to feel him on my chest. So I was holding him. He was so warm, and yes, he was huge. He's not like a normal little baby. He was 9 pounds, 3 ounces, and he measured 22 inches, which is pretty tall. My husband's tall. I'm kind of on the tall side. So overall, it was an amazing way to meet my child. And if you want to see what he looks like, here's a peek. So, baby, daddy, and I stayed in the hospital for the last 3 days, 2 nights, and the nurses were helping us adjust to having a baby. They showed us how to breastfeed. They showed us how to clean the baby, some just rudimentary things that we need order to make sure the baby was fine and I was fine too. They're checking up on me. So they let us go home, and you know, it's just been really, really amazing getting to know my little son, and he's so beautiful. And we just feel so fortunate to have him in our lives. Everything he does just seems so special, like every little smile, even every cry, he just seems so special and precious. So we feel so lucky. So lucky. Yeah, we're so happy. Okay, well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story and the food.